السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والعاقبة المتقين والصلاة والسلام على رسوله الأنبياء والمرسلين وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين أما بعد. We come on to the next chapter, which is chapter number 6, and Imam Haddad now speaks about reciting the Quran. So he says, you must have a wird of recitation of the mighty book to be read every day. Remember, we said wird is a specific act of obedience done at a certain time. Something that's routine to you, okay? A routine that you've made. So it's not talking about a specific act of obedience, but one, it could be any act of obedience. In this case, he's talking about the Quran, recitation of the Quran. So he says, you must have a wird, meaning a habit of recitation of the mighty book to be read every day. The least you should do is read one juz, in 1/30th of the Quran, so that you complete it once a month, and the most is to complete it every 3 days. Of course, you get some people that recite every single day. That's not a problem at all. Know that great merit attaches to reciting the Quran and an influence in illuminating the heart. The Messenger of Allah ﷺ said, the best of my nation's devotions is the recitation of the Quran, and Ali, may Allah ennoble his face, has said, the one who recites the Quran while standing in prayer receives 100 rewards for each letter. The one who recites it outside the prayer, but in a state of ritual purity, receives 25 rewards for each letter. And the one who recites it without ritual purity receives 10 rewards for each letter. Allah knows best. Essentially, with every letter of the Quran that a person recites, we know from the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ that you will attain reward for every single letter. As a matter of fact, in one hadith it mentions that don't think the letters Alif, Lam, Mim are 3 separate letters, but the Prophet goes on further, mentioning in effect that for each letter there are 30 rewards, and Allah knows best. But without doubt, any recitation of the Quran is extremely valuable, and for every letter you are rewarded. And it is something that we should connect to in terms of recitation of the Quran. Beware of concentrating while reciting on reciting a large amount to the exclusion of reflection and correct recitation. So what tends to happen sometimes is that a person will try to do a lot of recitation, and he said, look, be careful of this, because what tends to happen with some people is that by doing large amounts of recitation, you're trying to rush through it. And whilst reading this and you're trying to get just through the motion of it, what you exclude is reflection. Okay, you end up excluding the reflection time, and sometimes people compromise on the recitation of the Quran, the proper recitation, with its proper mannerisms and with the proper respect. There are certain rules, for what we know as the rules of tajweed, the makharij and sifat of letters, how a letter should be pronounced, what are the quality of those letters, and the proper way, the way it was revealed, it should be read with that same respect. You must reflect and comprehend while you recite. Slow, melodious recitation will assist you in this. Feel in your heart the magnitude of the speaker referring to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that you are before him, reciting his book to him, in which he addresses his commands, prohibitions, counsels and exhortations to you. When reading verses on unification and glorification, be full of reverence and awe. When reading verses of promises and threats, be full of hopeful expectation and apprehension. And when reading the commands and prohibitions, be thankful. Acknowledge your shortcomings, ask for forgiveness, and determine to show ador, meaning zeal and passion to Allah. Know that the Quran is the ocean wherefrom the jewels of knowledge and the treasures of understanding are extracted. I mean, the Quran is a book of ocean, it is a book of knowledge, and all our knowledge comes from the Quran. It is, of course, a book of many jewels. In essence, if what we want to be doing with the Quran is not just reading it in a robotic manner where we're just going from one page to the other and as a tick box exercise, but we should be extracting lessons from the Quran. We should, every time we recite the Quran, we should be reflecting and pondering over the Quran. It's our way of connecting to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So it's something very special. It says here, any believer who is granted the way to understand it, his opening, fath, becomes permanent, his light complete, his knowledge vast, and he never tires of reading in night and day, for he has found therein his goal and purpose, and his purpose. And that's the truth of it. Once you read the Quran and you do it in the way that a person should, then you never get tired of reciting the Quran, no matter how long. For how long a person recites, because you know this is your purpose, you know this is you communicating with your Lord, Allah. You're reading the message Allah has given to you. This is the quality of the sincere seeker. Shaykh Abu Madian, may God be pleased with him, has said, a seeker is not a seeker until he is able to find in the Quran everything that he desires. And we should find everything. The Quran is sufficient for us, so we should find everything inside the Quran. So far his message has been quite simple. Make a habitual reading of the Quran. When I say habitual, meaning make a specific time allocated for recitation of the Quran, and along with that specify a certain amount, ideally one juz of the Quran, but everyone's timetable is very different. Everyone's routine is very different. Everyone's capacity of what they can read and how long it takes them to read is very different. So maybe for some people that might mean toning down a little to 1 page a day, maybe even half a page. Even if it's one verse of the Quran a day, it's better than not reading the Quran at all. It's better than not reading the Quran at all. Remember, the Quran is the only message you have from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The whole reason the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was sent to our nation, to this ummah, was to explain the Quran, to show how to manifest the Quran in our actions. His ahadith are not something separate. It's not a separate form of revelation. It's a revelation that complements the Quran. So the essence is, and the core message is the Quran. The core revelation is the Quran. Everything else revolves around the Quran itself. So we need to establish a connection with the Quran. If we have no connection to the Quran, then a person it's impossible to have no connection to the Quran and say that you have a connection to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It is imperative to have a connection to the Quran. Now, for someone that reads the Quran, then make sure you do so with devotion and an understanding. Now, of course, not everybody understands Arabic. Many of us not even born or have no understanding of the language. But try to read the Quran in your own native language also. That would be my advice. Recite the Quran in your own native language as well as the Arabic. Not necessarily at the same time, but make a habitual reading of reading maybe a couple of verses or a page or whatever is suitable for you in your own native language, so you can understand what the Quran is even saying. It's so sad that many people, they spend their whole life reciting the Quran but don't know what the Quran even contains in terms of what's actually inside the Quran. How can we then say it's the most dearest book to us when we don't know what the message contains? So let's make an effort, inshallah, that we will try to recite the Quran, not just in Arabic but also in our own native language, so that we can gain an understanding of the Quran. It's never too late. And there are many people who don't know how to recite the Quran. Well, don't be ashamed. You know, many people, no one's born knowing and having knowledge of all things. No one was born like that. We all started from a place where we didn't know, and that's the nature of things. We just take the effort, and over time we learn. So if somebody doesn't know how to recite the Quran, get into contact with someone, maybe with your local Imam, the local masjid, or someone you may know that teaches that can help, and try to learn the Quran. There are many resources online today as well in terms of recitation of the Quran. Someone that struggles reciting the Quran, maybe due to certain reasons, don't worry. Allah will reward you double the amount. When we know this from the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, that someone who struggles to recite the Quran but still continues to do so, Allah gives double the reward. Why? Because they are struggling, they're making an extra effort in terms of trying to recite the Quran and learn the Quran. So it's the best thing that you can do, without doubt. Imam Haddad continues to say, be careful to read those surahs and verses which are recommended in the Sunnah at particular times. So when he says be careful, it means he's not saying a warning, he's saying that be considerate of these things. So we want to those verses that are sunnah to recite maybe at certain times or for certain reasons, make a habit of reading them. So he gives a couple of examples of reciting Surah Sajda, Surah Mulk, Surah Waqiyah, the last two verses, Surah Baqarah, every night before going to sleep. He says Surah Dukhan on Sunday and Thursday evening, but I haven't come across a hadith in that regards, and Allah knows best. And Surah Al-Kahf on Thursday night and Friday, meaning on Jum'ah, because remember in the Islamic day is from the Maghrib till Maghrib. Read if you can the seven saving ones. So this refers to a certain seven set of surahs, Surah Yasin, Mulk and others. Every night, for their merits are great. Also morning and evening, the first few verses of Surah Hadid, the last few verses of Surah Hashr, Surah Ikhlas 3 times, and the two refuge taking surahs 3 times each, meaning Qul A'udhu bi Rabbil Falaq and Qul A'udhu bi Rabbin Nas. Similarly, Al-Ikhlas and the last two surahs together with Ayatul Kursi and Surah Al-Kafirun, immediately before going to sleep, making these the last things that you utter. And God says the truth and He guides to the way. So a good way of getting some recitation of the Quran into your routine is there are certain verses or surahs to be read at certain portions of the day. Maybe before going to sleep, there are certain sunnah recitations. When you wake up in the morning, on certain days, for example on Jum'ah, the Friday, there are certain surahs to be read. So if you can incorporate that into your routine, then that's one way of accomplishing the task of recitation of the Quran every single day. Now, yeah, it might mean starting from a small place, but that's the way to start. Start with something small and gradually increase, inshallah. And we should aim to every so often recite the Quran. For unfortunately, many people only recite the Quran in the month of Ramadan. Let that not be the case. The Quran and Allah is there every single day in Ramadan and out of Ramadan. So we are there to connect with Allah every single day and night that we have. And a person must do that through the Quran. The Quran is something which will be an endless ocean of knowledge and guidance for a person. The Quran is sufficient for all people, and connect to the Quran. I can't stress that enough. And the Quran is so many reminders about a person who connects to the Quran, the importance of connecting to the Quran. Will you up there, inshallah? Jazakumullah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.